Hi, I'm Allie Hamilton, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the Come As You Are podcast. Every week, we'll be talking about some aspect of healing, usually around childhood wounds and complicated familial relationships. The topics will always coincide with my personal essay of the week, and this will be a place where we can take a deep dive together. I'm so thrilled you've joined me and delighted for you to always come as you are. Hi there. Hi there. Welcome to our talk. Today, the topic is watch your head. Watch your head. And I was writing about this phrase that you end up saying. Nobody really tells you when you have kids that that is a phrase you'll be saying more times than you can count. I also want to say to you at the top of this talk, new puppy alert. I have a new puppy, very sudden rescue that happened I filled out the paperwork on Sunday, and I got a call on Monday, and this crazy puppy was dropped off on Tuesday, and he is in the room with me. So if you hear insane background noise, that is Rufus, and he is crazy, but he wants to be with me. So that's how we're rolling today. So that, and maybe he'll make an appearance at some point. Yeah, all of that you hear. I hope you're not hearing too much of it. I hope it's not going to be distracting. But if it is, if you do hear it, then I hope that those are somewhat joyful noises. And that is part of the reason that I went ahead and did this right now, because I feel like it is such a painful time for so many of us. And our family dog died at the end of October after 12 years. He was my best friend. And I just was grieving. That was very sudden and painful, and really not ready to even think about another dog until recently, and had basically decided, maybe we would start looking when I got back from Mexico. I was just in Mexico leading a yoga retreat. And so anyway, filled out the paperwork on Sunday. Monday, I get this phone call. The very amazing thing, and I'll just talk about this briefly, is that Rufus is a Commodore, and Commodores are Hungarian sheepdogs. They're sheep herding dogs. And if you've ever seen, there are kind of two types of these. There's like Poolies and Commodores, and they both have the corded coat. They look like the mop dogs. Poolies are smaller and they come in different colors. Commodores are white. So I have had a Commodore before. They're not very common here in the United States. There are maybe like 1,500 of them total. And I never imagined there would be a Commodore available as a rescue. So when I went on to one of these sites, I was on multiple rescue sites. They always have a thing, where a drop-down menu where you can look to see different breeds. And my son and I are both allergic to dogs that shed. And so I'm always looking for the most hypoallergenic dogs you can find. No dog is completely hypoallergenic. And a Commodore is one of them. And so anyway, I clicked on it just thinking there's no way, and there was one. So I filled out the 7-page application, and I also sent pictures of my old Commodore, who I had for 10 years. That was the dog I had before my last dog, Chewy. The dog before that was Bogey. And shockingly enough, this woman called me on Monday, and then Tuesday she dropped him off. So it's kind of amazing. He's 1, and this is later than I've always had dogs from when they were 8 weeks old. So he's 1, he's big, he's stubborn. So we're having we're having that, but he's great. He's so sweet and so smart, and I'm very, very, very happy to have the honor of taking care of this dog, even though he is really crazy right now. Okay, so there's that. Watch your head. When I had my kids, nobody said, like, people tell you all kinds of things, but they don't tell you that is a phrase you'll be saying a lot. So, what happens is you have these beautiful children, and then eventually they become ambulatory. They're like walking or they're crawling or whatever it is. And that is when you start to realize like how many things are at head height for small people, right? And so you're just always like, watch your head, watch your head. And so I was writing about this mailbox that used to be on the outside of a fence at the end of our block. House at the end of our block had just a fence, as people do. And the placement of their mailbox was like exactly head height for a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old. And so for about 3 or 4 years, every time I would walk down the street with my kids, I was always saying, watch your head, because that mailbox could have taken out either of them, both of them, one after the other. And there are kind of like, I think, two schools of parenting. There's the school of parenting that's like, I think more Gen X, like how we all grew up, which is like, hey, you know what? You're going to walk right into that mailbox and knock yourself out, and that's how you'll learn. And then there's like the school of parenting that happened, I think, for those of us who grew up with the Gen X parenting, which is like, let me help you not hit the mailbox and knock yourself out, and so I have always worked against, like, you don't want to be a helicopter parent. I don't want my kids, I've never wanted them to be afraid as they're moving through the world. You don't want to have fearful children. You don't want to have kids who are scared to try things or who don't feel confident walking into a room, or who, that's not what you want. And you also don't want to set your kids up to get hurt. There's just this fine balance that you're always trying to figure out. And I've always been someone who found the part where you're diving and saving the day. That's a lot easier than the part where you start to step back and let your kids learn things. You have to do that at a certain point too. And I've talked about this before, but I think for like the first 10 years, your job is to like dive in and save the day and make sure, they need you. They don't know yet where the danger is. And then there's like overdoing it where it's like, oh, your kid forgot their homework and you're texting the mom chat to get the homework so they don't lose recess the next day and feel the repercussions of having forgotten to write down their homework. That's probably not something you should keep doing past 10, right? Because they've got to learn at a certain point. If I don't write down the homework, I'm going to lose recess the next day. You start to step it back a little bit and like figure out, I'm going to save the day when it comes to obviously anything where they could be in any physical or emotional danger, but also need to let them start to experience repercussions of like not staying on top of your stuff, or repercussions of like not showing up the way that maybe you should, whatever that might be, whatever the fallout looks like. And that's a lot harder to watch your kids be in pain. And I was writing about that, places where we are able to protect our children and places where we are not able to protect our children. And what happens as your kids get older is that you long for the days where your biggest worry was a misplaced mailbox, I just was writing about so many, it got my wheels spinning. Obviously, any of us paying attention to current events were just heartbroken and devastated by what happened in Texas last week. I mean, North Carolina, like we've had so many here in Los Angeles, huge, painful weather crises, just absolute, anyone who's kind of like climate change denier, I really don't know what to say anymore, because all you have to do is just look at what's happening to understand this is what it is. This is what's happened. The reason that these wildfires out here were so dreadful back in the fall. The reason that we have flash floods where it goes in a matter of hours, just like from a situation that, maybe years ago wouldn't have been this absolutely painful, to a situation that is just hard. You can't believe your eyes. You can't believe what you're seeing. Entire towns, houses, just cars, just everything just being washed away. The hurricanes, like all of it is because of the way we have been treating this planet, and this is what it looks like. And it's going to continue to look like this. Until we decide that we need to stop with our addiction to air conditioning and our little devices that we like, all these things. AI, hello, is so terrible for the environment. And now look, that's exploding. These AI data centers that are, everywhere suddenly, that are springing up. They're terrible for the environment. They use up a lot of energy, water, resources. This is not what we need, okay? And ChatGPT is not a replacement for a therapist. Find a human being to talk to if you need to talk to someone. Ugh. Anyway, so all of that. But that's what was on my mind, and this happens, I think, when you have somewhere along the line, I started to really understand on this like visceral level that there is no such thing as other people's children. That's just, there's no such thing, like, yes, I grew these two particular people inside my body and pushed them out into this world, right? They're my children, but they don't belong to me. They belong to the world. They belong to themselves. They belong to the world. And when I see someone else's child, it's like, that's also my child. Like, I'm responsible, If I see a 5-year-old at the playground and that child's mom or dad is not around right that second, or they're dealing with their infant or whatever it is, then that child's my responsibility for a minute. Like, I'm very happy to step in because I know how hard it is to try to be managing all that, because I did it. I did the single mom thing for 8 years with 2 kids. It's really hard. We need each other. And, not everyone can have kids. Some people desperately want children and they can't have kids. And some people don't want kids. And in the world as it is right now, there are people, there's a lot of things going on. Like, but no matter what the situation is, when you see other children in this world, they belong to all of us. They're all of our responsibility. That's how it should be. I genuinely believe that in my heart, is that children belong to the world, and we should all be looking out for the most vulnerable people in any society. And that is unfortunately not happening enough. Okay, so that's what obviously I had Texas on my mind. And it's not just, obviously, the news cycle always latches on to the stories that they just rip your heart out. Obviously, you see a bunch of little girls who just went to camp. That's all that happened, and how devastating that is. There are families all over, all over Texas. There are families whose were camp counselors. There are families who were just with each other visiting and have gone through devastation. There are families who had people who went and risked their lives trying to rescue other people. They don't all look the same. It's a whole diverse bunch of people who were affected by what just happened. Flash floods don't care who you voted for, what you look like. They do not care who you love. It doesn't matter. A flash flood is a flash flood. A wildfire is a wildfire. It doesn't stop to ask, who did you vote for? Are you straight? Do you believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion? It doesn't stop and ask. It does what it's going to do. So, I posted something on one of my social pages last week about the Medicaid cuts and the ongoing ICE raids here in Los Angeles. And I have to tell you, if you don't live in Los Angeles or in one of the cities where these raids are happening, I think Massachusetts is going through it as well, you really don't know. You don't understand what's happening if you don't live here. You will understand, but you don't understand yet. It is devastating what's going on. Now, I know that it just so happens that Los Angeles is a target of this particular president. He really dislikes the governor and has it, just has a particular vendetta. And so we've got the National Guard here. We had them here because of the protests about the ICE raids. And I can barely describe what's happening to people. But we have people in our community who are being pulled off the street by masked men armed to the teeth in unmarked vans who do not present ID or warrants. They're just grabbing people off the street and putting them into the back of vans, and sometimes very violently. We had a bizarre, I don't even know MacArthur Park. I don't know if you saw, there's so much going on every week. And I know for so many of us, it's exhausting and painful and hard to keep up. But, what is happening is not normal. And these are not hardened criminals. They're not hardened criminals, okay? These are people who have been trying to quote unquote do it the right way. They've been going to their immigration appointments for years. I'm just getting so tired of kind of saying the same thing over and over again. I really wish people would just do the tiniest little bit of work, just a tiny, a Google search. It's not hard to just read up on this a little bit, but the immigration system in our country has been broken for decades. And for people who are well, I did it. It worked for me. I did it the right way. My family did it the right way. Yeah, probably years ago, maybe your family did it quote unquote the right way and it worked well for you. And congratulations. I'm really happy for you. It's not like it was. It's not like it was. And this is not the kind of thing that you can paint everybody with one brush. People from different countries are treated differently. People who are white passing are treated differently. Just try to understand that how things may have been for you are not necessarily how things are for everyone. And that's just a good lesson period for every person to think about, is that, we all have our own frame of reference when we walk into a situation, and we are bringing the frame of reference with us wherever we go. I think of it as like frames of reference, almost like glasses that you're wearing as you're going through your day. And the frames are made of every experience you've ever had, but they're shaped by how you look and where you come from and luck, what has happened for you, And so being able to take those glasses off your face so you can just kind of see clearly and understand that how things have been for you is not necessarily how they've been for other people. And that just because something happened for you a certain way doesn't mean it's happened for everybody that way. And that what is happening right now has never happened before. People always start screaming about, Obama separated families and Biden, yes. And I was not okay with that either. In case you're wondering, was not okay with that either. But not this, what we're seeing right now, this has never, ever happened before, what is happening right now, truly. And I'm here. I'm seeing it. I'm not, I have no vested interest. It's not it's enjoyable for me to tell you dreadful, heartbreaking, devastating things are happening. I don't enjoy that. I would much rather be telling you hey, life is beautiful, yay, let's breathe, let's be present, let's, celebrate. I'd love to be doing that. This is no joy for me to tell you what is happening here, but what is happening here is not okay. People's rights to due process are being violated. People are being sent to detention centers that are, talk about human rights violations. People are being treated like I would not treat this rescue animal I just saved. Like, and by the way, when you rescue an animal, I think everybody knows they rescue you 4 times more. But it's like, what is happening is genuinely not okay. And so I posted something last week, and I've kind of given up on certain platforms. I've built communities over the years since like 2009 on different platforms. So it's very hard to just like walk away from them because on some of them I have a lot of people. For example, like, Meta, I really don't, I'm on Facebook right now as I'm recording the podcast. I'm also going live on this business page on Facebook that I built back in the big page I started back in 2009. It has like 174,000 people on it. That's a lot of people by some standards. By others, it isn't. But, it seems like a lot of people to me. And so it's very hard to just like walk away from that. And I don't want to walk away from that. But I have stopped. I will not pay Meta anything. I don't boost posts. I don't pay for anything. I just do what I do here whenever I'm on those platforms, whether it's Instagram or Facebook. They are not getting any money from me. And sometimes I get shadow banned. I'm very open about how I feel. And if I'm going to be on platforms with lots of people, I'm going to say how I feel. And sometimes I get attacked. I've certainly lost people. That's fine. I've also gained people. And this is how you figure out who your community is. You say openly how you feel. And not everybody has to agree, and that's okay. But I'm not where I'm at. And, there are a lot of people who are like, when you have a business page, you shouldn't talk about politics. Yeah. Everything's politics. The way your food gets onto your plate is political. Everything is political. I'm sorry to tell you, yoga is political. It always has been. The idea is you spend some time on your mat trying to make the world inside you peaceful, compassionate, loving. You try to get present. So you're not racing into the past or racing into the future. You're right here in your body. And then the idea is you go out into the world and you're a kind, decent human being who's paying attention to what is happening around you. And if you see injustice or you see someone suffering, you try to help. That's the whole point. And if you're practicing because you want chaturanga arms or you want to press to handstand, okay, but then I'm not the right teacher for you. That's okay. I'm just not the right person for you, and you'll find someone else. But I'm not going to be somebody who's quiet because I have a business page and I don't want to lose business. We're so far beyond that. It's too important. I have children. I need to be able to look them in the eye at the end of the day. I need to be able to look myself in the eye at the end of the day. And I've been practicing for, 34 years. I know what this practice is about. I know that it's supposed to make me the best possible version of myself I can be. So I'm not going to be quiet. And also women are trained to be quiet. I'm not going to be quiet. You don't get my silence or my complicity. It's not happening. So if I see something that I don't think is okay, I'm going to say it. And, if you don't like it, then you don't have to listen. You don't have to read what I write. And you don't have to listen to what we don't have to agree. And we're probably just not, but I'm not going to be on the wrong side of history to make other people feel comfortable. And that's just how it is. Okay. So I was writing about ways we can keep our children safe and ways we can't. And unfortunately, there are a lot of ways that we can't. And that's one of the most painful realities of being a parent that you slowly come to understand. It's really hard. With my son, I learned it as I was giving birth, unfortunately. I was oh, I had this whole birth plan, and listen, he's here and he's fine. So let me just say that all worked out. I'm here. We're both here, but nothing went according to my plan. And I'm someone who, excuse me, really likes to plan. And especially back then, I've kind of let go of that. I'm evolving. But, I really, my default is to plan and to think if I can plan ahead and think about every possible scenario where there might be danger, then I can avoid it somehow for myself or the people I love. I can kind of manage the environment and prevent people from getting hurt. And I've learned the hard way, there's nothing you can do. A lot of things are outside your control. Certain things you can work on, but most things are outside your control. Very, very difficult to surrender to that idea, especially as a parent, because for me, when you have children, they're so vulnerable and they need you so much. And that's, again, every person's child. When you're out in the world and you see these little kids, like, they're not okay unless we make them okay. If you see a child like running on the street, like, I hope you jump in if they need help and their mom, dad, whomever is like, helping their other kid, whatever it is, because they're not okay without us. That is what a society and a culture, like a healthy culture, you don't have to say that. People know that, right? You don't have to tell people, hey, if you see a child running toward the street and their mom's running after them and you're closer, grab the kid. You don't have to say that because people know it. But I find more and more, I'm saying things that sound so obvious to me. So that's what I was writing about. And with my son, nothing went according to my plan. So I learned really early and very much the hard way. Wow, okay, you're going to love these people more than you have ever loved anyone, anything, ever. The vulnerability you are going to feel now is going to increase exponentially because the thing you love most in the world is now on the outside of your body. And you know that you can't always be there every second the older this little person gets. And for those of you with little kids, let me just tell you, it doesn't change. Now my kids my youngest is about to be 16 and my oldest is 18. It doesn't change. It's not like, oh, now they're big and you don't feel the same way you felt when they were tiny in your arms or their chubby arms were around your neck or you were going to their first grade, play. It does not change. So when you drop them off at college, you're like, it's like you're being gutted. It's like it doesn't end. And so it is difficult because the world is not safe. It's not safe. And it never has been, but I don't think it's ever been less safe. Am I saying that right? Yeah, than it is now in so many different ways for so many different people. And that's really painful, and I think that's what I was trying to write into is that reality. And so there's the mailbox that I used to say to them, watch your head as we were going down the block. And I still say it sometimes, even though the mailbox is now gone. Somebody I think a few years ago, a new family bought that house and they turned that mailbox into a slot. So the mailbox isn't there anymore. And my son is a lot taller than I am. And my daughter, I think, is going to pass me any second now. So I don't have to worry about mailboxes anymore. But sometimes when we walk by the house, I still just say, watch your head. And they laugh, probably just to humor me or because they pity me. I long for those days where that was sort of my big concern was the misplaced mailbox or, if somebody was going to run down a hill, because it's so much harder now and the concerns are so much greater. And I was writing about when we were in Mexico, in San Miguel de Allende, I was running a yoga retreat and my son got salmonella. And I didn't write about it until this week, but when we got to the ER, a lot of things happened, but he started to not feel well. I had a house call, which you can get there for $45, by the way. and the doctor did a thorough exam and put him on Cipro, and basically said, if he's not feeling better in a couple of days, call me. And he still had a fever. It just wasn't going well. I took him to the ER, and I thought that they would sort of say, okay, let's put him on intravenous antibiotics, like broad spectrum, and fluids. And I was saying in the essay, like, I've been at this rodeo for a while, so kind of like I know some things, right? So that's sort of what I expected was going to happen. That's not what happened. We got there, and the doctor, was asking a lot of questions. They did an ultrasound, and she started saying things like, I don't like this. I don't like what I'm seeing. This is not normal. I've never seen this before in someone his age. There's an obstruction. It's probably like dehydration or bacteria, but like his internal organs are shutting down. I mean, I was like, what? And she was like, okay, so we're going to do blood work. I need to do a CAT scan so we can figure out exactly what is going on here. My son, being my son, is it twins? Because she's doing the ultrasound. And, or is it a boy or a girl? Yeah, that's what he said. And she was like, it's twins. So they're like, and I'm trying to sort of like laugh on the outside, but inside I'm having that whole internal thing of like, and he said to her, what's the worst case scenario? And she said, which I would not have said in front of him, but he's 18, so he's asking the questions that are in my head that I was going to ask her later. And she said, the worst case scenario is you need surgery, but I don't think that's going to happen. But like, let's just take this one step at a time. So then I'm in my head like, okay, I don't think he's going to need surgery. I really don't think he's going to need surgery. If he does need surgery, he's going to be okay. He's healthy. He's 18. Like, this is going to be fine. This is all the tape going on in my own head as I'm trying to like reassure myself. And so, to cut to the chase, like he had 2 different strains of salmonella, and they kept him overnight. They did put him on broad spectrum antibiotics and fluids, and that did get everything moving again, and he was fine. No surgery, no twins. But it was scary there, like it was not comfortable. It was scary for a number of hours, and really like not scary until I knew he was fully okay and being discharged. Then I knew like, okay, he's okay. And this is the kind of thing that you can't, there are things you can protect your children from and things you can't protect your children from. And my cousin, who I grew up with, more like a brother to me, honestly, than a cousin. Like, these are my New Jersey cousins who, when my parents split, when I was 4, my mom started to eventually, she didn't do it right away, but eventually she started to drop me off there like many weekends. And it was great for me. I'd grown up with them already. We used to go to the Jersey Shore when my grandmother was alive, my mother's mother. And these are her brother's kids, my cousins. And so they're all a little bit older than I am. They're like 4, 6, 8, 10 years older than I am. And I was the baby. And like, they could not have like showered me with more love and affection. And they would like fight over, whose bed I was going to sleep in. And it was ideal. So my cousin had a son who was 6 years old, and he started to have some symptoms. They started when he was like 5.5, just things that like he got a cold, and then it was really rough. He was dizzy. He was having trouble doing things he'd been doing for a long time, like tying his shoes, balance. Things just weren't going right. And strangely enough, I haven't talked to anyone in my family about this, but they initially diagnosed him with Lou Gehrig's disease, with ALS, which is what killed my mother. She did not have a genetic marker for it, and my cousin's son did not have that. That's not what he had. But just weird. But that's what they thought at first. It turned out it was a brain tumor, and he didn't make it. And, you know, I can never talk about it. Like, even after all these years, it's been a really long time. I just can never talk about it without losing it, because it was just so brutal to, you know, to experience that kind of loss of someone so little and innocent, and to watch what it did to someone I love so much, and to our whole family, really. You know, so whenever I think because of that, like, I just am very clear on the fact that these things happen, and they happen to really good people. You know, this whole idea of quid pro quo, or like, you know, if you're really good, bad things, it just doesn't work like that. Life doesn't work like that. And so I'm very aware of that, and my heart breaks for people who have to carry that kind of loss, because it's just, you know, it's just not, I think we talk about like the natural order of things. It just isn't, you know, it just isn't. And so whenever there's anything in any news story for anyone, you know, I'm like, my heart breaks. It just does. And I think that you can't help when you know what an 8-year-old is, because you've had one in your house. You can't help but, like, you know, you just start thinking about, oh my God, you know, like, if my 8-year-old was at camp and something like that started happening, like, the fear, you know, and the fact that you're not there. It's just awful. Like, it's terrible. You know, it's just devastating to have to live with that thought of like what that must have been like. And you just become plagued with those thoughts, you know, and every time there's like a school shooting or whatever, like, this is what happens. My heart just like breaks for these kids and these parents, because you have to live with that, you know, reality that your kid that you love more than anything in life, their last moments were so scary and you weren't there, you know. It's just, I don't know, it's like the worst possible thing I can think of. The dog just came over. And so that's what happens for me when I see these news stories, or I read something where like someone couldn't afford health care, you know, couldn't get their kid diagnosed, couldn't get the medication they needed. Like, that's not okay. You know, that's not okay. And it's not socialism to want everyone to be able to take care of their child. You know, to make sure every kid can eat. Like, that's just humanity. That's just decency. That's just compassion. That's just like normal human behavior. And if you aren't feeling that, like, something's going wrong for you, big time. I really don't know what to say. If you only care about your specific kid, then you have lost the thread. Like, I don't know how much more clear to make this to you. And the reason that I'm saying it is because when I post things sometimes, it's so disheartening. It really is, you know. I posted something about these Medicaid cuts because that is what is going to happen. That is what is going to, it's not a question of will it happen, might it happen. It's going to happen. There are going to be children going to bed hungry, a lot more, millions of children now. There are going to be families who can't afford the help that they need, health insurance, kids who die because they're not getting the medical care that they need. And I posted something last week, and sometimes I don't post things because I'm like, if I post this and someone says something heartless, I can't take it today. I don't have it in me to take it today. Like, it really does. I try not to let it do me in, but sometimes it just really does. And so I posted something and someone wrote back in the comments, I watched this person grow up. I won't say how, but he wrote back and he said, it's better than the Democrats. I used to be a Democrat, never again. The Democratic Party has lost me. At least this administration isn't full of socialists. I can't imagine wanting, millions of criminals crossing the borders. And nobody wants millions of hardened criminals crossing the borders. No one wants that, okay? That's just not even a reasonable thing to say. And it's not socialism to want children in this society to be okay. And to get to a place in your life where you're just, you only care about yourself and your family and you don't care about anyone else. And you're straight and you're white and you're a man and you've done well for yourself. And you think that your life is, you're protected because of your quote unquote good choices. I got news for you, fella. The floods don't care. They don't care. And, you can vote however you want, and I'm not wishing this on anyone. I wouldn't. And that's a very important point I want to make, because when we had the fires out here, there were a lot of people online who were just saying absolutely just awful things, oh, you millionaires, you'll just buy yourselves a new mansion next week, or whatever, not everybody out here is a millionaire. Not everyone out here has a mansion. There were a lot of families who were completely wiped out. And case in point, with Texas this week, I might detest the governor and the attorney general, but my heart breaks for people in Texas. Use your brain. I don't know, try to have some critical thinking. I don't know. It's hard. It gets exhausting. I found myself really tired this week, and those comments didn't help. I just let them sit there. I just decided, you know what? I'm just gonna let them sit there in all of their sort of racist, ignorant glory. They can just sit there, if that's who you want to be. Anyway, I was further writing about, so my son is okay, and not just okay, but he's great. He hit the ground running. He's back at it. I went to pick up my daughter, who again is about to be 16, and she was at a party last Friday night. I went to pick her up at 11, right here in the not far from here in the neighborhood in Santa Monica, and we were driving back and talking and laughing. She was telling me about the party, and we were very close. We talk about everything. I will say, both my kids were really open lines of communication, and so my guard was down. And partly I was, it was end of the week, end of the day, 11 o'clock at night, and partly I'm pulling into my driveway, so I was feeling safe, and we were immersed in a conversation. And I was writing about, for most women that and most women just in life, your guard is always up if you're out in the world. You're always paying attention somewhere in your brain. It might not even be conscious, but somewhere in your brain, you're scanning the environment. I grew up in New York City, and I had a lot of very bad things happen as a kid and as I got older. And it's unfortunately that stuff continues. It doesn't end. And sometimes it's at the hands of people and when I say people, I mean men. And sometimes, it isn't. It's men on the street. And obviously not all men. Lots of great men out there, but lots of predatory men. And that's just unfortunately how it is. So, when you're out as a woman, you're always like, if you're walking alone, which you try never to be doing, by the way, but if you happen to be walking alone on a desolate street, you're looking around. You're like making sure you're trying to figure out, if something were to happen, where would I go? What would I do? You probably turn your location services on. You let somebody know where you are. You might put your keys between your hands. If you're on a desolate parking lot, parking structure, you're always paying attention. You know that you don't leave your drinks unattended. If you're out somewhere and you're going to the bathroom, you have a girlfriend holding your drink. It's a constant, I went on a date off a dating app once, and a guy spiked my drink. This was not that long ago. I mean, it was long ago, but it's not that long ago. I had kids, like these things happen all the time, unfortunately. So, it's just exhausting, so you're always on alert and always paying attention. And there's just that thing, even where I was also writing about like being out to dinner, and this, like, the owner of this restaurant was going around to all the tables and say, "Oh, hello, I'm so," shaking hands. "Oh, it's so nice to have you here." And he came to the table that I was sitting at, and I was wearing a backless top, and he started like tickling my back with his fingertips. Disgusting, and I pushed him, like, "But don't touch me. What are you doing? I don't know you. Don't touch me." Like, women and girls are not your property to just like touch, grab, play with. Like, that's not how that works. So, but anyway, my guard was down. Now, I've had to have conversations with my daughter. I've had conversations with my son too. My son is the kid who like watches, and if he sees he's at a party and there's a girl who's had too much to drink, he's the kid who's going to get her home. I have had to say to my daughter at 14, I think, is when I had that first conversation with her, because 8th grade is when kids start experimenting. And you just don't know, like, my kids talk to me because I made myself be a safe place for those conversations. It's not always easy. Of course you want to be like, "Oh my God, don't do that." Of course you do, right? But you don't say that stuff out loud. You say it in your brain, and you just listen. You just listen so that you become a safe place for them to tell you anything. And that way you know what is happening. And when, your kid goes to a party for the first time and somebody sneaks in alcohol, they tell you. You're not, in the dark about that stuff. So I let my daughter know, I was like, "Listen, you cannot leave your drink unattended, okay? People can slip things in your drink that make you pass out, that make you not really aware of what's happening, and then really bad things can happen." And we had to talk about that too. So, I've been trying to find the ways to have these conversations so that she's walking through the world not feeling afraid, and not feeling afraid of boys or men, and not feeling afraid to be a girl in this world or a woman in this world, but also having the information she needs to stay safe, which sucks. Let me tell you, it sucks to have that kind of conversation with a 14-year-old that you would like to, retain her innocence for as long as possible. But, it's more important to me that she has the information she needs to make good, solid choices. So we've had all those conversations. Anyway, we're driving back from this party. We're laughing, we're talking. It's worked out really well for me to have that open line of communication with both of my kids. And I have not, to this day, I've never grounded my kids. I've never taken a phone away. I've never had to do any of that. I have it's not that they've never made choices that were not the best. It's just when they have, we've had serious conversations about what happened. What were you thinking? Let's talk about it. What do you think caused like this course of events? What can you do differently next time? Like, that's what we've done. I've let them know if I'm disappointed, if I'm surprised, if I don't understand. And I think the worst thing for them has ever been like me being disappointed. That has been the worst repercussion for them, is me being disappointed in something they've done or said. And it has happened so rarely. And so I just really, for whatever that's worth, it's not a scientific experiment, but I have two really good human beings. They really are. They're very kind, compassionate people who pay attention to what is happening around them and want all of their friends to be safe. All of their friends to be safe. And they have very diverse friends. So yeah, do with that what you will. But we pull into the driveway and I am feeling relaxed. I'm home. I've lived in this house for 20 years. I know all my neighbors. I'm with my kid. Just like I'm relaxed. Get out of the car, grab my purse, close the door. And I walk, I walk to the trunk end of the car. I'm going to go around the back of the car, walk along the front of the fence and up the path to my front door with my daughter, right? So I get to the trunk end of my car and I see there's a man walking up the block. I'm trying to make this easy because you can't see me. So let's say I am about to head to the trunk end of my car and head east. He's heading west. He is 4 feet away from me. He's blonde. He's taller than I am. He's dressed mostly in dark clothes. And, our eyes meet. I was startled. And he says, hi. And not even quite like that. I'm not getting it exactly right. But he says hi to me and everything's wrong. Like everything in my body is instantly like danger, 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 danger. Like I know. And, I would say if I'm an expert on one thing, it's this. Like I know when something is not right with a man on the street. Like I know that. Unfortunately. And so I'm million things going on in my head at the same time. I have to say hi back. If I don't say hi, you can antagonize a person like this, a man like this. And then you are I'll spell it because I was so angry last time when I was recording the podcast. I dropped a lot of F-bombs, and I know sometimes people listen to the podcast with their little kids around. I don't want to have too many episodes that you can't do that. So if you don't say hi back to a man like this, you may be in his mind, a bitch, and then you deserve whatever happens to you. So you can antagonize a man like this by not saying hello. So you have to say hi. But if you say hi and you're friendly, and you're doing that sort of Gen X thing that we were all raised to do, that give Uncle Henry a hug, give him a kiss. He wants you to give him a kiss. And you're as a kid thinking, Uncle Henry makes me feel really strange. I don't like the way he hugs me or kisses me. But my parents are telling me I have to hug him. That's how we were raised, most of us in this generation, to do the thing, to override our own discomfort, to be polite, to be good girls. That's how we were raised. If you do that, if you say to yourself in that moment, this guy's probably fine, he quote unquote looks normal, whatever that means, I'm being crazy, he's probably just a guy out for a stroll, and so you decide to be polite, say hi, you're screwed, because now you are probably going to be fun to toy with. So you have to know the right way to say hi. So I said hi, the way you would say F-U-C-K off to someone. And great, I just taught your kids how to spell that word. F off, right? That's basically how I said hi. I looked right at him and I said hi, and like that. And at the same time, the driver's side door closes and I'm like, here comes my daughter. So in all these explosions going on in my brain, in seconds. And I see him see her, and I see his eyes, which by the way were black, like soulless, not right in the eyes, widen. And now he's looking at both of us like prey. And he has walked past me just enough that he's to the right of me. So in order for me to pass him and walk with my daughter to the house, I have to turn my back on him. There's no way for me not to do that. And you do not want to turn your back on these people. This is not what you want to do, on these men. This is not what you do. So I'm just like, and my daughter and I make eye contact. I didn't have to say a word to her. Like, she understood instantly, not a safe person. Like, she knew. I didn't even have to say a word. So she starts hightailing it for the gate, and I go with her because there's nothing, I'm going to protect her. So I'm going with her. I've turned my back on him, and we're both going really quickly to the gate, up the front path, and I'm just praying. I knew my son had just gotten home not very long before. I'm praying he has not locked the front door, because then we're going to be pounding on that front door. And thankfully he had not locked the front door. So she goes flying. She opens the screen, opens the front door. She goes in. I go in after. I slam the door. This man is coming up the path toward the porch. Totally had followed us. I locked the door in his face. And my heart was just like pounding, and her heart's pounding. And I know this because we hugged. And, I was just, like running this whole thing back, like just feeling so angry with myself for letting my guard down. You know what I mean? For like not having pepper spray. I got my daughter pepper spray a year ago. A man harassed her on the street over a year ago, and I got her pepper spray at the time, which, by the way, is illegal. Isn't that interesting? In California, you have to be 16 to legally carry pepper spray. But you don't have to be 16 to be harassed. So I was just like, you know what? F that law. And I got her pepper spray, which she has had on her keychain ever since. Taught her how to open it, use it, whatever. But in that moment, neither one of us, it just happened really quickly. However, I will say, as I was following her, I grabbed my keys inside my bag, and I had my keys between my fingers. And I was already in my mind rehearsing, if the door is locked and she's got to pound on it, I'm going to punch him like as hard as I can with the keys between my fingers. And I'm in my brain, like rehearsing that action. I don't know what he wanted. I don't know if he was just like getting off on scaring us, or if he really wanted to follow us into the house. Like, I don't know. I'm never going to know. I don't know. When I looked out through the blinds, the curtains, a couple minutes, like a minute later, and he was gone. I didn't call the police because I've been in this situation before, and the police will not do anything if a person has not attacked you. I'm sorry to say. I mean, they would have come over when they got to it, because it's not an emergency, because he's not there. And even if he had been there, if he was outside the door, they would get there when they got there. But all they would have done is take a description and maybe circle the block, and that's it. Because he didn't actually do anything except scare us and come up the path. That is how sad it is. That is the legal system, and that's what happens with the police in that kind of a scenario. They're not going to do anything unless a person actually physically harms you. That's when you have recourse. Up until then, you have a police report, In a situation like this, you're not even really getting a police report. You're filing, you're saying what happened. It's not much will come of it. So a better thing to do is like, and I don't like Nextdoor. That app, I hate it. It's a cesspool of hate in my area anyway. I hate it. I had a very bad experience on Nextdoor, so maybe maybe my perspective is skewed, but for this kind of thing, to reactivate and just kind of explain, hey, here's what happened. This is what this person looked like. This is the time of night this happened. This is where it happened. Please be on alert. That's when an app like that can be really useful, but the police don't really help you with this kind of thing, unfortunately. So yeah, I mean, dogs help you. Dogs help you. So, there's that. Like, we now have a very big puppy who I'm working with so that he doesn't bark and growl at people who are coming to the house that we know, but I have no problem if he barks and growls at people like that. So, I think what happened for me in that moment is I felt, and in the hours after, I was really not okay for the rest of the night. I was so upset that I hadn't screamed bloody murder. I could have done that. I could have yelled at him. I could have yelled, you don't yell help, because a lot of people don't want to help. You can yell fire. You can yell, and you're not in a crowded theater, don't do that. But you can yell, power line down. You can yell anything except help, just about, and people will come out. There's a lot of things I could have done that but my guard was down. So by the time my brain kicked in, we were already in a bad situation. And my daughter's been in self-defense for over a year. I sent her to self-defense camp after this man harassed her on the street. And so it was last summer she went to self-defense camp. And then the instructor is, it's called SHIELD, by the way. And I don't know, I think he's just in Los Angeles, but he is like a martial arts guy forever. And a friend of his was attacked in a parking lot. This was years ago, and he turned his entire business into how can I help girls and women learn how to fight off actual attacks in the world? Because a lot of these self-defense classes I have found they're great, but in a real world scenario, they're maybe not going to be applicable. And he's all about that. My daughter's described all the different things. He uses his full body weight. He's over 6 feet tall. I think if things had come to blows, he would have been for the fight of his life between the two of us. I think it would have been, I don't think he would have realized what he had signed up for. But I'm glad it didn't come to that. The only other thing is you just don't know anymore who's got a weapon. And that was on my mind. You just do not know who's got a weapon anymore. So it was just, I think the thing that was so upsetting is feeling like you're not even safe, in your own driveway, in your own front yard, up to your front door. You're just not even safe there anymore. And I can't even keep my daughter safe. Is so enraging. It's hard for me to talk about. It is so enraging. And I think that a lot of these predatory men are emboldened right now. I think they like to see the fear, especially in strong women. They like to see fear. And it's just, it's just really devastating. And it does make me long for the days when, it was a mailbox that I was worried about. So I was writing about all of that. And I think that ultimately, I don't want to leave you on this terribly sad note. I think ultimately what I'm hoping is that we will finally, at some point here, the people who are still supporting this administration will finally understand, you can keep doing that. Obviously, anyone can do whatever they want to do. It's going to come back to bite you in the ass. Like, it will. These are not people who are going to show up for you when times get tough. And, what you end up having, I think that you reap what you sow is a real thing. I'm not talking about any kind of quid pro quo here. I'm not talking about that. I'm not saying like terrible things can't happen to good people, because they do. I'm talking about reaping what you sow in terms of how are you being in the world. And if terrible things happen, like, are people going to show up for you? And if you are the person who's only ever been concerned about yourself and your family and no one else, no one's showing up for you. Sorry, that's probably not what's going to happen. People aren't going to show up for you because you haven't shown up for anyone else. And, listen, having said that, like, if there's a flood and there's a person going by me and I can reach out an arm and save them, I'm going to reach out an arm and save them. I'm not going to be like, who did you vote for? And do you care about other people before I reach out my arm? Like, I'm just going to do the normal thing that you do. But I'm just saying, by and large, if your attitude in life is looking out for number one, you're going to reap what you sow. And so is everybody else. So those of us who are devastated right now about what is happening for people in our communities, those of us who want everyone to have health care and, who care about like future generations and the planet, and who think everyone should have clean water to drink and air to breathe and a good education and infrastructure and healthcare and just normal basic stuff, we're going to show up for each other. And that's not socialism. That's just humanity. Okay. That's just like normal caring about other people. Like, really just so weird that needs to be said, honestly. So bizarre that needs to be spelled out. But that's the world that we're in now, So I have a lot of faith that there's power in numbers, and I'm very sad that we're in a situation where people are deciding the government, which is supposed to be full of public servants serving the public, that's not what we're going to do anymore. We're just going to have people there serving themselves. But, I'm very sad about that, very angry about that, very angry that so many people, like 31.8% of people, decided to put a predator in the White House, who, by the way, is under such incredible cognitive decline. I don't know why no one is talking about that. Man cannot hold a thought in his head at this point. And the vice president is just as terrifying. Peter Thiel doesn't think women should have the vote. He's the one who made this man vice president. Please just look at some things. Like, it's not hard. Figure out who these people are. They do not believe in democracy. They don't like women. This is not a good situation. And I don't know. Like, I don't understand how anyone is missing this stuff. But, some people are so focused on their one issue. Like, their one issue. That's all they see. And I would just highly encourage you to like take a more bird's eye view, because your one issues, I respect. If you have a one issue, I understand. But like, there is a bigger context here, and probably better people to help you figure out your one issue than these folks. They're terrifying people. They're white nationalists. They're Christo-fascists. They're tech billionaires. They're not even Republicans. They're like, they've taken over the Republican Party. They're white nationalists, Christo-fascist tech billionaires. And they don't care about democracy, and they don't care about America, and they don't care about you. Like, I really don't know what to tell you. They don't care about you. And it's a reality show right now. And it's really sad. And a lot of people are suffering. A lot of good people are already suffering. And if you're not seeing it, you will. You will. But those of us who are seeing it and are trying to figure out how can I help, keep doing the things that you're doing. Find your neighbor across the street who's elderly and doesn't have anyone and see what you can do. Really. I promise you there's someone like that on your block or in your neighborhood who doesn't have anybody to take them to the doctor, who doesn't have a way to get to the grocery store. Just try to get to know the people around you and figure out who needs help, or go volunteer somewhere. Or, there are a lot of places where I'm a big one-on-one kind of fan. I really think the tangible things we can do it just feels good to put your body in a car with a neighbor and take them grocery shopping. But, there are people who can't do that kind of thing because they're working or because they're home. They're homebound. They can't leave the house. There's so many other ways to be helpful. Just try to find something. You could call a local public school and see if there are any kids who have outstanding lunch debt and pay that, pay some amount of that instead of buying the person's, coffee at the drive-through behind you. That person probably doesn't need your $5, but maybe the kid at your local public school could, or maybe there's some kid at your local public school who has an outstanding, support the library. I don't know, just kind of nose around and see what you can do right in your neighborhood that would be really helpful. And that will feel good to you and be really helpful to other people, And if you're looking for a little bit of joy and a different kind of chaos, they're rescue dogs. Definitely having a different kind of chaos here right now. So, although he's quieted down, which I can't decide if that is good or terrifying, but that's how it is. Anyway, I love y'all. I'm sorry. I know it's really hard right now. And I actually have I'm hatching up a plan. I'm really longing for community and conversation. And so I have some ideas about ways we can do that together, which I will share with you shortly. And I love you, and you know where to find me if you need me. Otherwise, I will see you next time. Stay safe out there. Be a safety net for anyone you can, and be kind to yourself if you're struggling. It just means that you're sane. Okay? Lots of love.